Hey everybody, Keith here. Please like and subscribe. Today we're talking Star Wars. Now, I'm a Star Wars fan and a big movie fan and cinema fan, and there's been recent Star Wars news that's all been a little bit sort of confusing. And so I wanted to talk about what Star Wars has coming up. What films do they have coming up? Like, what's the deal? What's going on? So here we go. Okay, so there's some conflicting information, but I'm going to show it sort of all here. And don't worry, there is some stuff known about the stories of what's going to happen in these movies. I'm not really going to go into any of that. You can read about that if you want to, but I don't like the spoilers. So I just want to talk about, in general, what they have slated apparently as coming up. So if you look at the info, so I'll put up this thing here, okay? Now it says here that upcoming films, you've got The Mandalorian and Grogu. Okay, so this is directed by Jon Favreau. So now Jon Favreau didn't really direct anything in the Mandalorian show or Book of Boba Fett or Ahsoka. That was all sort of them creating a team where he was overseeing everything and sort of directing the team that was directing the shows. So that's sort of interesting, and Jon Favreau has done good movies. But you've got the screenplay by Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Okay, so Dave Filoni's involved. Now, it's produced by Kathleen Kennedy. Now, Kathleen Kennedy, of course, very, I don't even think you can say polarizing at this point. She's been met with widespread criticism in the way she's made the moves for what Lucasfilm has done for its projects, and not just Star Wars, but Lucasfilm in general. And of course, Disney has been highly criticized as well because, let's be honest here, if you have someone in charge of something and they're not really seen as doing a good job or being very successful, in general, that person, you sort of let them go, okay? You sort of fire them or let them go. But that's not what they do when Kathleen Kennedy has a failure, a massive failure. They sign her to make more movies. Now, of course, people say, oh, that's because Disney is woke, you see, and so they can't get rid of her because then that would be sort of saying that, oh, well, they do things based on merit, and apparently that's not what Disney does anymore. I mean, it's like that to me is crazy. But anyways, so they've got The Mandalorian Grogu. So this is a film coming out. Okay, so not the show, but the show is still apparently, they say it's still going to be a thing. So not quite sure what's going on there. Maybe it's just old news that they say the show is coming back, but it's not. But anyway, so the point is, as far as the films are concerned, which is the big thing, The Mandalorian and Grogu is a film coming out, they say, May 22nd, 2026. Okay, so that's not that long from now. That's basically a year and a half from now. And, so that's really interesting. I do think that this film is going to avoid the boycott that Star Wars films have faced, really all the last stuff they've done. People boycotted the shows, they boycott everything because they're fed up with really Kathleen Kennedy and the regime of Disney, essentially what everyone in general claims is ruining Star Wars. Okay, so you've got that going on. Then you have this Rey film. Okay, so untitled New Jedi Order film. All right, so New Jedi Order film, slight spoiler, but who knows what the film's going to be about. And now this is Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. So this is the director, woman director, very, very controversial choice, unbelievably controversial choice, because I think in general the feeling on why she was chosen was that she essentially, her outlook on everything is the same as Kathleen Kennedy's, a very strong, I suppose you could call it feminist bias. So it's all about feminism. Now, this is the film that they say Daisy Ridley playing Rey, she's actually going to come back and play Rey again, which is the thing everybody said was not going to happen. Now, apparently, it's happening. The film, by the way, this Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy film, has apparently gone through horrendous pre-production. They're still in pre-production. Apparently, the news is they're going to start filming it at the end of 2025. So it's still in pre-production now. Now, a lot of people, the general consensus on this film in particular is that it is not going to be made because they just seem to be having so much trouble. And there's so many films that they've sort of teased as coming out and then they didn't come out. And so everyone's saying, oh, this is going to be another one of those. The other thing is that this film, unlike the Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni film, this new Rey film is almost certainly going to be boycotted. And it's almost certainly going to be totally woke and totally feminist, which is the main things that people criticize Kathleen Kennedy for, because the content of the film flies in the face of what is common sense. I've always said, I don't really mind if the film has all these sorts of themes that don't necessarily ring true. My big problem with these movies is, even if those are the themes you're going to go with, there really honestly is no excuse for the film being poorly made. And last bunch of films and things they've done have been extremely, really poorly made, considering the money that goes in. They pour fortunes into these movies. I could direct them a million times better. Okay, that's what I say, and I stand by that 100%. So, in this, I mean, it says right there, produced by Kathleen Kennedy. Okay, so now you've got James Mangold. So, James Mangold, what has he done? And this is an untitled Dawn of the Jedi film. Okay, so again, it's slight spoilery, so we're sort of going prequely. Okay, so James Mangold is known for doing the recent Indiana Jones film. Okay, now that film I thought was pretty good, and, you know, the thing is that I don't think that James Mangold is the guy who made the film sort of woke and feminist. I think that that was Kathleen Kennedy. The problem is that Kathleen Kennedy is the producer on this thing. So she's going back to the guy who did Indiana Jones, well, because he did what she told him to do. So it's not about him making the film. This is, again, an extension of Kathleen Kennedy. So I don't think this film is going to go very well either. I hope it does, okay, because I like the idea. I think it's a cool idea, and I think this guy is a good director. But again, Kathleen Kennedy, you know, who knows what you're going to get. Okay, so there's that. Then they have this business of the untitled New Republic film. It's like, okay, so New Republic? Oh, okay, so, you know, produced by Kathleen Kennedy and Jon Favreau. And this is directed by, screenplay by Dave Filoni. All right, so this is the thing that everyone has been calling for forever, that Dave Filoni do one of the movies and sort of prove himself. Now, he directs the Ahsoka show, the television show. It's in one season. Apparently that show is also coming back, but they've done one season. Dave Filoni, heavily involved, and he directed the show. The show was not extremely well directed, okay? The show was okay. It was good. And if you're going to elevate the guy to do the movies, you know, there's not a lot of confidence in Dave Filoni to do the movies. All right? It's like, if I was Dave Filoni, I would say this film is going to be better than if, you name it, Christopher Nolan came in and directed it. But if Christopher Nolan said, I want to do a Star Wars movie, they'd let him do a whole trilogy. Dave Filoni says he wants to do a trilogy or Star Wars, where they go, we'll make you wait. You can start with the TV show. You can do. So basically, I think what's going on here is the public is on the side of Dave Filoni. And because of that, because he is a super nice guy and people really like him, so they're giving him a chance here. He's earned it that way. He hasn't earned, not to use the word earned in a negative way, but basically Dave Filoni has elevated to the point where now he can do one of the movies because people trust him enough because he did the TV shows and he's been around Star Wars really forever. So that's this list here, but hang on, there's another list. Okay, so now look at this. So again, you see May 22nd, 2026, The Mandalorian and Grogu. Then you have the Charmin Obaid-Chinoy film, that's the Rey film. Then you have the Dave Filoni film, the James Mangold film. Then you have the untitled Taika Waititi film. Now, this is the guy who, he did the Thor movies. He did some of The Mandalorian. He did that movie where he played a vampire, which is really funny, What We Do in the Dark. And so he's going to direct and write it. And again, producer Kathleen Kennedy. So, you know, and he is really good. Okay, so that is interesting. But again, it sort of feels like they've been talking about that, him doing a film for a while, and we haven't really heard anything. So is this still happening? Who knows? Don't really know if that's happening. Then you have this business of Lando. Okay, so Lando, another film they've sort of said for a while now is going to happen, with Donald Glover returning to play Lando Calrissian as he did in the Solo movie. But the Han Solo film was not really well received, and that people mostly point to that film as being the recipient of the most major boycott because people really hated The Last Jedi. So Lando also is kind of like, again, the Lando film to me just speaks of they're treading water. Why do a Lando film? What is that giving us? You know, I like Donald Glover, and I thought he was good in Solo, and I even thought Solo was pretty good. But the problem is that people want Star Wars to move forward into the future, and the Lando film is like, it's like, what? I just don't think people are that interested. If it was a show, maybe people would watch it. But, you know, it's things that people want to be big. This doesn't feel big. This Lando film feels medium. Okay, not small, but it feels sort of medium. And again, I'm not sure that one's going to happen either for the reasons I just stated, especially since the Lando film, they basically came up with that when they had decided, okay, we're not doing another trilogy for a long time, but now they're into the next trilogy. So it's like the time for the Lando film was between the last trilogy and the next one. So, okay. Then you have this business Rogue Squadron. Okay, so this film is maybe what the one people point to the most as being one that they've said for a long time is coming out. Patty Jenkins, she did Wonder Woman. Okay, so those movies were pretty good. They got to do this one. But again, everyone's just accusing Kathleen Kennedy of hiring a woman director because it's this feminist theme. Kathleen Kennedy has a feminist sort of theme or streak, and so everything is through the lens of feminism. So if it was up to Kathleen Kennedy, the films would only be directed and produced by women, have complete women casts, and complete women crews. And the themes of the films would only be about women and feminist themes. That seems to be what Kathleen Kennedy wants. So Patty Jenkins, again, if we've heard nothing about this is sort of supposed to be... I've heard comparisons where it's like Top Gun, but Star Wars X-Wings, which I think that's a cool idea. And if the film's really good, then great. But it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Maybe it happens as a TV show, or maybe it's one of these. I just can't see that film going to theaters and then suddenly it making billions of dollars. It just seems like people just won't see it. And it's almost like Kathleen Kennedy can't afford another huge failure, although apparently she can, because it doesn't seem to make any difference with what Disney does. But anyway, then you've got Sean Levy. Okay, now Sean Levy he's done the last 3 Ryan Reynolds movies. He works with Ryan Reynolds a lot. And he did the Deadpool and Wolverine movie, and he's done Stranger Things. So he's a pretty sort of, what would you say, higher than moderately decorated director. And he's pretty good. Okay, he's pretty good. Now, so he wants to do a Star Wars film. It's like, okay, is Ryan Reynolds going to be in it? Because that would sort of be interesting. And this is sort of more recent news. So it's almost like he did the recent films with Ryan Reynolds. They were pretty successful. And so they're saying, well, maybe he can come in and do a Star Wars movie. So, but who knows what that is? Again, that's one where, again, it's like, what is it going to be? A sort of comedy thing? See, to me, that's almost like the Taika Waititi film, where it's like these are sort of like, they're sort of comedy one-off guys. And if you're a Star Wars fan or a fan of really big cinema, that's not really what you want. What you want is the real full effort, the sort of long-term plan, a grand design, and the elevating of cinema. Okay, so there's that. Then Rian Johnson, okay, maybe the most polarized, not even polarizing, the most sort of scrutinized of all the directors and all the projects here. So an untitled Rian Johnson film, and there are rumors that it's going to be a trilogy. Now, there's so much to say about this. One, at the time when Last Jedi came out, which Rian Johnson directed, and he's also done the recent Knives Out movies. He's doing a third one, and apparently the news is when he finishes that third film, which is coming out in 2025, then he's going to start his new Star Wars trilogy. Okay, but Rian Johnson is the guy who did The Last Jedi, and he received an unbelievable amount of flack, criticism. I mean, he was skewered. The public turned on him completely after The Last Jedi. Since then, things have cooled a little bit. The public is more open to Rian Johnson because he had what it seems like very little or nothing to do with what The Last Jedi ended up being. That it was Kathleen Kennedy. Because Rian Johnson wasn't there for the Acolyte, and the Acolyte had all the problems that The Last Jedi had. And of course, the Knives Out films are very successful, and they're very good. And they don't seem to have really any of the woke feminist themes that the Star Wars stuff has. So people are sort of giving Rian Johnson another chance. They're much more open to him now. And I think that's the right thing. The thing is that Rian Johnson's going to come back, but it's like, is it just going to be Last Jedi again? Because I would prefer Rian Johnson do a Star Wars thing without Kathleen Kennedy there. But I don't think that's going to happen. So that's very interesting. Okay, so now there's one more that's not listed here. Okay, so there's this guy, Simon Kinberg. And very recently, he's been apparently signed on to produce a new trilogy of films. Okay, so now that ordinarily would be ridiculously huge news, but it's so diluted from all these other people producing trilogies. And apparently he's going to like write and direct them and even produce them and really sort of do the whole thing. So that's sort of really sort of curveball. He did an X-Men movie, okay, and he did another movie, which I don't think anyone saw. Yeah, he's going to do this new Star Wars trilogy, and apparently this is happening. So you've got an awful lot of movies coming up. Now, of course, people are all saying the same thing, which is Kathleen Kennedy said there were a whole bunch of movies and things coming out in the past, and then really none of them came out because they decided not to do them, or something ended up being unsuccessful, and so that made them cancel his other projects. And so everybody now looks at these huge list of slated projects and thinks, well, this is just really the same thing again, which I don't doubt, to be honest with you. Lots of the directors that have worked with Kathleen Kennedy and the writers as well, there's this sort of recurring theme of they're constantly getting kicked out and replaced. Okay, so the Han Solo movie was like that. They went through all these different people. Then Ron Howard ended up doing it. With Force Awakens, they had these people were going to write it. Then they ended up not writing it. And then JJ and Larry Kasdan came in and they ended up writing it. So all these changes over and over again. So is that going to continue here? I think probably. I really think probably. I think you're going to see a lot of the names here change and a lot of these projects get canceled. But the big problem is this. None of this is addressing the elephant in the room. And there are several big elephants in the room. But the main one being AI. AI is going to improve to the point where it can make videos and films pretty soon, next few years. And so the Star Wars movies need to be coming out right now, and none are. So they're making them now conventionally. But of course, everyone, you and I both know that the issue with AI, the reason why it stands a phenomenal chance at crushing Hollywood, is that it's reducing the cost of producing a film, which was hundreds of millions of dollars, down to next to nothing, hundreds of dollars, thousands, just to produce a whole movie that maybe even looks better and is better than a conventionally made Star Wars movie. Because let's be honest here, it's not like the things they're making now are making a lot of money anyway. And how many of these new films are they going to make that are going to get boycotted? So that has to be addressed, because it's like the idea of doing new trilogies. It's like, well, this is how many years out are we? 6, 7, 8 years? 8 years from now, AI's no better? It's like, come on, it's crazy. It's like the whole industry's over by then. So it's absolutely fascinating. And my prediction is that I think Lucasfilm's going to have a lot of problems. For some reason, they're hanging on to Kathleen Kennedy. And Kathleen Kennedy has said how she wants to have a win before she retires, because she wants to retire. Well, slating in all these new films and trilogies, these things are going to take years and years and years to make. That doesn't sound like someone who wants to retire. That sounds like somebody who's staying until essentially the end of Hollywood or the end of Lucasfilm. So it's absolutely fascinating. And if new information comes out, I'll make a video on it. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and you'll see me again very soon. Thank you.